You're an expensive burden for this company, Miles. After 12 years leading the sales team, he terminated me with a smirk, adding, "3 interns can do your job." I calmly replied, "I'm sure they can, sir." My name is Miles Stormridge. I'm 41 years old, and until that cold Tuesday morning in October, I was the sales director at Zenith Corporation in Phoenix, Arizona. What started as a routine quarterly review turned into the end of everything I'd built at the company. Not just my career, but my understanding of loyalty and corporate politics. "Miles, let's cut to the chase," Rex Shadowmere said, leaning back in his executive chair on the 40th floor of Diamond Tower. The CEO's corner office overlooked the sprawling desert landscape, but his focus was entirely on dismantling my professional life. "Your compensation package has become unsustainable. Your commission structure is bleeding the company dry. We need cost-effective solutions, not expensive legacy employees." I kept my hands folded, maintaining eye contact. 12 years of building Zenith's sales operation from $8 million to $62 million in annual revenue, and this was the gratitude. "I understand your concerns about budget optimization," I replied evenly. "Good, because we're restructuring the entire sales division. Hunter Silvermoon will be taking over as sales manager. Fresh perspective, modern techniques, significantly lower overhead." Hunter was 28 years old, 6 months out of business school with 0 experience in our industry. But he was also Rex's nephew, which apparently qualified him to replace someone who'd quadrupled the company's revenue. "3 interns can do your job for what we're paying you in quarterly bonuses alone," Rex continued with that smirk I'd grown to recognize over the past months. "I'm sure they can, sir." Something in my tone made Rex pause, but he was too arrogant to recognize a warning when he heard one. After the meeting, I walked back to my office on the 35th floor where my team was waiting anxiously. Word travels fast in corporate environments, and everyone could sense the shift in leadership dynamics. Raven Goldfield, my top sales representative, approached as I began clearing my desk. "Miles, this is insane. You built this department. We hit every target for 3 consecutive years." "Business decisions aren't always about performance," I said, packing my industry awards into a cardboard box. "What are you going to do?" I looked around the office where I'd spent 12 years building relationships, developing strategies and creating systems that turned prospects into loyal clients. Something I should have done years ago. That evening, I sat in my home office in Sunset Ridge reviewing the encrypted files I'd been maintaining for the past 18 months. As sales director, I had access to all client communications, including details about contracts, pricing structures, and relationship dynamics that made Zenith successful. What Rex didn't understand was that our biggest clients weren't loyal to Zenith Corporation. They were loyal to me personally. Relationships I'd built through late-night problem-solving sessions, emergency deliveries, and custom solutions that larger competitors couldn't provide. My phone buzzed with a text from Falcon Brightstone, CEO of Fortress Industries, our largest client representing 40% of Zenith's annual revenue. He'd heard concerning rumors about changes at Zenith and wanted to meet immediately. The next day, I met Falcon at his headquarters across town. We'd worked together for 8 years, and he trusted my judgment on technical specifications and implementation timelines. His concerns were immediately apparent. Fortress Industries had $67 million in contracts scheduled for next year, all negotiated based on my team's expertise and track record. Falcon made it clear that if Zenith couldn't guarantee the same level of service, Fortress would need to explore other partnerships. The implications hung heavy in the air between us. Hit subscribe to see who really controlled those relationships. 2 hours later, I was sitting in Casper Nighthawk's office at Platinum Legal Solutions, discussing options for protecting my professional interests. The legal analysis was encouraging. Non-compete clauses were difficult to enforce when termination was without cause, especially if clients approached me independently. Starting my own consulting firm was perfectly legal, as long as I wasn't soliciting Zenith's clients directly or using proprietary information. Casper's advice was clear. If clients contacted me seeking continuation of services, I was obligated to provide excellent customer service. That afternoon, I filed paperwork to establish Velocity Enterprises, a sales consulting and client relations firm. The business registration was completed by 3 p.m., and I had a functional office space leased by 5 p.m. Meanwhile, at Zenith Corporation, Rex was discovering exactly what 3 interns can do your job actually meant in practice. My phone started ringing at 7 a.m. the next morning. First call was from Fortress Industries' procurement director, trying to reach someone at Zenith about the quarterly contract review. The new sales manager seemed confused about their specifications. I explained that I was no longer with Zenith, but would be happy to discuss their requirements through my consulting firm. By noon, I'd received similar calls from 4 other major clients. Not because I'd solicited them, but because Hunter Silvermoon apparently didn't understand the difference between premium service contracts and basic commodity sales. Rex's first panicked call came at 2:30 p.m. He wanted to discuss my transition period, claiming there was confusion about client relationships. When I explained that I'd completed my transition as requested and transferred all files to Hunter, he became increasingly desperate. The clients were asking for me specifically, he admitted. His offer to return with renegotiated compensation came too late. I was already committed to my new consulting business. After Rex hung up, I called Aurora Starfall, my younger sister who worked in corporate communications. She had insights into how companies managed crisis situations. Her analysis was sobering. If a company lost 40% of its revenue due to poor transition planning, board intervention typically occurred within 2 weeks. 3 days later, Ember Wildrose from Nightwind Investigations called with information I'd requested about Zenith's financial stability. Miles, their stock price has dropped 12% since your termination was announced. 3 major clients have formally requested contract modifications, and 2 have initiated procurement reviews for alternative vendors. Any insider trading activity? Rex sold significant shares 2 weeks before firing you, either incredible timing or advanced planning. The picture was becoming clear. Rex hadn't fired me to save money. He'd fired me to manipulate stock prices, planning to buy back shares after the inevitable decline when clients left. What he hadn't anticipated was that I'd be in a position to capture those clients independently. By the end of the week, Velocity Enterprises had signed consulting agreements with 5 former Zenith clients, representing a combined annual value of $47 million. Not sales revenue, but consulting fees for managing their vendor relationships and technical requirements. Rex's second call was less cordial. Miles, you're deliberately sabotaging our client relationships. I'm providing consulting services to companies that requested assistance with vendor management. Those are our clients. Those are independent businesses making their own procurement decisions. This is tortious interference. This is competition, Rex. The free market you claim to understand. 2 weeks after my termination, Zenith Corporation's board called an emergency meeting to address the revenue crisis. Rex had lost 60% of the sales pipeline and was facing shareholder lawsuits over the suspicious stock trading. Casper called me with updates from his contacts in the legal community. Miles, Rex hired expensive litigation counsel to pursue injunctive relief against your consulting business. On what grounds? They're claiming you violated fiduciary duties by planning your departure while still employed. Interesting theory. Do they have evidence of advanced planning? That's where it gets complicated for them. Your business registration occurred after termination, and all client contacts were initiated by the clients themselves. So they're arguing that providing good customer service was a breach of fiduciary duty? Essentially, yes, it's not a strong position. The legal battle lasted 3 months, during which Velocity Enterprises continued growing. Former Zenith employees began contacting me about opportunities, frustrated with Hunter's inexperience and Rex's increasingly desperate management style. Raven Goldfield was the first to join Velocity Enterprises, followed by 2 other senior sales representatives who'd resigned from Zenith rather than work under Hunter's direction. "Miles, it's like watching a masterclass in how not to manage client relationships," Raven explained during her first week. "Hunter treats our biggest clients like they're buying office supplies." What's Rex's response? Panic. He's offering signing bonuses to prevent more departures, but people are leaving anyway. 6 months after my termination, Zenith Corporation announced they were exploring strategic alternatives. Corporate speak for preparing to sell the company. Their stock price had declined 45%, and several major clients had terminated contracts due to service quality issues. Velocity Enterprises, meanwhile, had grown to 12 employees and was handling vendor management for companies across 3 states. The consulting model was more profitable than traditional sales, with higher margins and more predictable revenue streams. The irony reached its peak when Falcon Brightstone called with an interesting proposition. "Miles, Fortress Industries is considering acquiring a controlling interest in Zenith Corporation. The board thinks we can stabilize their operations and rebuild their client relationships." "That's ambitious. We'd want you to oversee the integration as Chief Business Development Officer. Essentially, you'd be running the sales operation you built originally." "At significantly higher compensation than my previous role?" "Significantly higher, with equity participation and performance bonuses." I considered the offer for exactly 10 seconds before declining. "Falcon, I appreciate the opportunity, but I've learned something important about building value versus extracting value." "What's that?" "Building value requires patience and long-term thinking. Extracting value is what Rex was doing, and we've seen how that ends." 1 year after calling me an expensive burden, Rex Shadowmere was forced to resign as CEO following a shareholder revolt. The board brought in external management to handle the acquisition by Fortress Industries. Hunter Silvermoon lasted 6 months in the sales manager role before being reassigned to administrative duties. The 3 interns Rex had mentioned were never hired, probably because the company couldn't afford their salaries after losing most of their revenue. Aurora called me with the final irony. "Miles, guess who's asking about consulting opportunities with Velocity Enterprises?" "Please tell me it's not Rex." "Rex's former assistant. Apparently he's been struggling to find executive positions after the Zenith debacle." I laughed for the first time in months. "Tell her we're always interested in qualified candidates with relevant experience." 2 years later, I was speaking at the National Sales Management Conference about building sustainable client relationships, when someone asked about dealing with corporate restructuring. "The key is remembering that businesses don't buy from companies," I explained. "They buy from people. If you focus on creating genuine value for your clients, corporate politics become irrelevant." "What about when leadership doesn't recognize that value?" I thought about Rex's smirk, his confidence that 3 interns could replace 12 years of relationship building, his fundamental misunderstanding of what made Zenith successful. "Sometimes the best thing that can happen to your career is being fired by someone who doesn't understand your worth," I said. "It forces you to prove that worth in the marketplace." After the conference, a young sales manager approached me. "Mr. Stormridge, I'm in a similar situation. My CEO thinks our department is overpaid and wants to replace us with junior staff. How do you stay confident when everything feels unstable?" I handed him my business card. "Document everything. Build relationships that transcend corporate boundaries, and remember that people who call you an expensive burden usually don't understand the difference between cost and investment. And if they fire you anyway, then you build something better than what they destroyed." That evening, driving through Phoenix toward my home in Sunset Ridge, I passed Diamond Tower, where I'd once worked for Rex Shadowmere. The Zenith Corporation logo had been replaced with Fortress Industries branding, and I could see lights in the offices where my former colleagues were rebuilding what had been torn down. My phone buzzed with a text from Falcon Brightstone. Velocity Enterprises is handling more business than the original Zenith sales department ever did. Want to discuss expansion opportunities? I pulled over and typed back, always interested in sustainable growth. The expensive burden had become the solution, not through revenge or manipulation, but by doing exactly what I'd always done. Creating genuine value for clients who recognize the difference between cost and investment. Sometimes the most expensive thing a company can do is try to save money by eliminating the people who actually generate value. Rex had learned that lesson at a cost of approximately $60 million in his entire career. The education had been expensive for him, but invaluable for everyone else.